We'll record this neighborhood meeting and we'll make sure to post that online. So if you do want to go back and read these slides or revisit some of the questions and responses that were brought up in this neighborhood meeting, you're able to do that. And I'll make sure to share that link with you to access the YouTube post. I try to get these videos up within a couple of days of the neighborhood meeting. So you can find those on YouTube, and that link will be in the chat at the end of the meeting. We will also provide a link for you to submit a written public comment if you'd like to do so for a city council. And then you can also, if you prefer to submit a public comment in person, you can also attend the city council meeting October 25th at 6 p.m. Once again, I will be putting a document in the chat with clickable links because you can't access links here on a slide. So we'll make sure that those are accessible for you. You have resources to keep up with this project and to make sure that your feedback is heard by City Council past this neighborhood meeting tonight. But let's go ahead and launch into this meeting today and talk a little bit more about what you can expect tonight. So I'm going to pass it on to some city staff who've been working on this project. Megan or Beth, I guess, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and talk a little bit about the project?
Yes, hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Beth Yonce. I'm the director of the Social Sustainability Department with the City of Fort Collins. And this is about our seasonal overflow shelter, which provides during the winter months of November through April, some added capacity to winter shelter so that people seeking out shelter during the cold winter months will have a place to stay. We've contributed and helped in this historically. We even help with coordination and funding, really to eliminate the chance of people not having the option to stay inside somewhere and potentially even die due to exposure out in the cold weather during the winter months. So we just try to do this so that there's enough capacity for people seeking shelter during the winter. Next slide. As far as 117 North Mason, that is, and we have a map coming up so you can see that, but basically it's just south of the Justice Center. So it's on North Mason between LaPorte and Mountain. The entrance will be on the west side though, so kind of facing Civic Center Park. It was identified just recently. Originally, we were going to go with the location that we used last year, which was 212 West Mountain, but we changed due to a better location size and availability of this location. So we changed to this one. And of course, the proposed use would be from November, and it'll be, I think we have it later, but it would actually start November 11th and would go through the end of April next year. Fort Collins Rescue Mission, which by the way, we have Seth Forwood, who's the executive director of the Rescue Mission. We also have Paula Ordaz, who's the operations manager of the Rescue Mission here. If you have any specific operational questions, and I'll also introduce, well, I'll just do it now. Brad Rhoda, he's the director of Outreach Fort Collins, is also here and helps us with some engagement and outreach efforts, not only to make sure people know that this shelter is available to them if they need it, but also to work with nearby businesses and others who have questions or concerns or anything like that. But we will lease that property. The city will lease that property, the portion of that property at 117 North Mason to the Fort Collins Rescue Mission to be the operator of that overnight shelter. It'll be open only overnight for a max of up to 44 men experiencing homelessness. We collaborate with Outreach Fort Collins, the police department. We'll have a third-party security provider and others to address concerns and mitigate potential impacts. We always, at least internally, look at and we debrief, what happened the year before, what are issues that have come up, what are the things we're seeing so that we can best address them proactively as much as possible, but also in the moment. So we'll have contact information as well. And Rescue Mission will also continue to operate their current location, which is located on the corner of Jefferson and Linden. And they will have capacity there for up to 106 men there at that location. And that location is a 24/7 shelter, so they're open during the day as well. Catholic Charities will continue to serve women and families at their location on Linden Center Drive as well. And that's also operated as a 24/7 shelter. And just to reiterate, the 117 North Mason will only be overnight. People will leave in the morning to go elsewhere, Murphy Center or other places for whatever they need to do during the day. Next slide. This is the location. So I have the cursor. If you can, well, you probably can't see my cursor. There's the cursor. It's 117 North Mason is what we call the Fort Collins Utilities Customer Service, because that used to be operated out of there. It is not any longer. But you'll see it's right along Mason. You'll see to the north is LaPorte and the Larimer Justice Center, and to the south is West Mountain. And you can see that pink building right there is 212 West Mountain, which is where it was last winter. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So the only other thing I was going to add, which Em did say in the beginning, was so there is a council meeting. So just for next steps, there is a council meeting next Tuesday evening. We'll basically present the same information to them. What we're asking them is to waive certain code requirements, except for life safety type code requirements, to allow the temporary homeless shelter to be there this winter. And then they'll have second reading on November 1st. And then 10 days past that, which is November 11th, will be when they open for operation there. So those are the next steps and how this will be moving forward. And I guess, I don't know if I turn it back over to you, Em, at this point.
Yeah, thank you so much, Beth. I am happy to kind of take over, and we'll launch into the Q&A section of our meeting. I do want to quickly touch base and talk a little bit about some ground rules for the conversation, just so that we have a little bit of a base to have a conversation that is productive for everybody here. So we do, just to make sure that we are using everybody's time wisely, we do ask that you raise your hand and wait to be called on before unmuting yourself and asking your question. I will keep order of who raised their hand first, and I'll call on you to ask your question in the order that you raised your hand. Please don't talk over other folks. We want to make sure that everybody has the chance to ask their question and be heard. And make sure that when you do have your chance to speak, that you're asking one question. If you have multiple questions, we'll have you go to the back of the queue. And then if we have time, we'll be able to get to your next question. And that's just because we do have limited time here tonight, but we will have people who are responding to questions after the fact, including myself and the staff here tonight. So if you have questions that aren't responded to tonight, you are welcome to reach out, and I will keep a list of follow-up items that I can connect with you with after the fact. So we'll make sure that your questions are answered. When it comes to disagreement, that is totally fine. That's what the neighborhood meeting is all about. It's okay to disagree, but we want to make sure that we're doing so with respect. So when you're listening to other members of the public or to the members of the city staff, make sure to keep an open mind about what they're saying. And if you do have critique, make sure that you're focusing on the ideas that are behind what they're saying and not the people themselves or the characteristics of them. When you're giving feedback, we are really interested in hearing it. And that's why we want you here tonight, but we want to hear feedback that's going to be constructive and that can help us make this project the best that it can be. And then sometimes, just because we do have, again, limited time, let's just keep comments as focused and brief and concise as possible. So when you do have your time to speak, make sure that you have your question or your comment ready to go and that it's focused on the topic. And again, if you do have other questions or questions that are not necessarily related to the topic, feel free to reach out to me, and my contact information will be recorded and listed here. So I will go ahead and open things up. If you don't know how to participate, you can, I see a few people on their phones, so there are multiple ways to get your hand raised. You can see here on the bottom of your screen, if you're on your computer, to the reactions tab, and you can press that button, and you can see a hand raise button that you can press. Or if you're on your phone, you can press *9. and that will raise your hand. And when you're ready to speak, you'll just press *6, and that will unmute you. You are also welcome to put some questions in the chat, and I'll be monitoring that as well. And I'll try to kind of go back and forth between people who are having questions in person and questions in the chat, so we get to all of them. So I'll go ahead and open them up. Go ahead and raise your hand. I'll stop screen sharing so we can kind of have a conversation.
If no one comes up right away for the question, could we give a couple minutes to Seth or Paula to kind of just to give a general overview of what they know so far about how operations would be? Maybe that would help kind of start the conversation.
Yeah,
but I see you have a hand up. So
I have one hand up. So Martha, why don't you go ahead and start us off? And then if we don't have any other hands, I think that's a great idea, Beth. Martha, you're on mute. Would you unmute yourself?
All right. Hi, I'm here largely as a board member and co-founder of the Global Village Museum, which is right next door to both proposed last year's site and this year's site. And Kathleen Batterton from the board is on also, so I don't want to take over what she has to say. I just want to express a few of my honest concerns about the location of this right next to our facility. We rent from the city of Fort Collins, and last year there was a great deal of fear, I think, on the part of our staff about what was happening around our building, which was not pleasant. It involved defecation, urination, damage, and in one case, breaking a window that cost us $2,000 to replace, and the city did not assist with that. And one of our board members, who was a former police officer, made it a point to try to check on things regularly and was very concerned about the fact that the security people, these third-party security people, had not, in fact, were not circling the building as they were supposed to do, or keeping an eye on things, and were seen primarily standing outside the door with the people who had checked in evidently and then came out to smoke. But there were a lot of people who didn't go back in, or who it was kind of chaotic. So I don't want to say any more than that. I'd like Kathleen to be able to give her concerns, but nobody wants people to be homeless in the winter and suffer from that. However, we also feel that there have to be perhaps some stricter guidelines about who. We had one particular individual who was extremely violent and frightening to the people and staff in the museum, and it was a matter of great concern. So that's all I'll say for now.
Thank you, Martha. And Kathleen, if you'd like to speak as well, we don't have any other hands raised, and you are welcome to at this time.
You need to unmute as well, Kathleen. You're still muted.
There we go.
There you go.
I'm Kathleen Batterton, and I too am a board member for the Global Village Museum. I would reiterate exactly what Martha's concerns are, and I would like to know what the city is planning to do. You speak of security. I would like to know what that security is going to be this year, if it is going to be any different than what we saw last year, and how we can work together to make this work, because we are definitely wanting to have this sustainable housing. It isn't that we don't want it, but we want it to be safe, not only for us, but also for the people who live there, for everyone. So I would like to address and have somebody address for me what is going to happen this year in terms of security, and if it is going to be any different than last year, because it did not work last year. As Martha said, we had a window broken, we had other damage and litter and so forth around our building.
Yeah, is it okay for me to jump in?
Feel free.
Yeah, thank you for that question, and thank you for expressing the concerns and the challenges that you faced last year as well. It's important for us to know them. So as far as security, we're still actually in the process of doing the RFP, with our process, and we will have security identified and all of everything, our contract and everything with them ready before the 11th. Our plan, and we're working really closely with our risk, safety, and security folks from the city, also learning from last year to make some changes into what our expectation is for the security. So they will be there in the evenings, in the mornings, and overnight to make sure check-in goes okay, make sure people leave okay in the morning. And we're adding in, I know one of the things we're adding in is a request for them to do through the day checks as well. Since they're not open during the day, it doesn't mean that people aren't still kind of in the vicinity in the area. So we wanted to add that in so that they can check. We're talking about hourly checks so that they're pretty frequent. All of that is still yet to be finalized, and there may be some changes as well. They're working really closely. Like I said, our security, emergency security and risk manager is very much involved with that as well. And if you have any other specific things or requests, I mean, I can't promise that, but if you have any specific requests for how security is used, you please share them with us, and we'll at least make sure to consider them. That'd be great.
Sorry,
I
I don't know
also
how
just
to raise my hand. Can I? I don't know how to raise my hand on here. Can I speak? I'm a Chrissy Adamoja neighbor, about 2 blocks away from the site last year and the site we have proposed for this year. And what we've seen, being in more the residential side, is that we get a lot of people coming down our way, I guess, between the hours in which you're not providing the service. And, last year we have 2 young kids and, they're going to have to deal with this at some point in their lives, but, seeing people who maybe aren't as approachable or, sorry, a little unsettling for them. But what we left last year thinking is that, like, who do we call, who do we seek out help from when we've got people going through our trash cans, and loitering, I guess, around, and they're not necessarily committing a specific crime, but it creates a little sense of fear, and maybe that's just something we have to become comfortable with. But I just wanted to voice a support for the people that have spoken so far, that, they probably see it a lot more than we do, but at 2 blocks away, we're still seeing, the after effects as well.
Yeah, thank you, Christine. I saw that Seth had his hand up, and I was wondering if he had anything that he wanted to add about the previous question. And then I was wondering if there was anybody on our staff who had an answer for Christine's question.
Yeah, I can just respond real quick to the ladies on the board of the museum. We really appreciate getting that feedback from you, especially the perspective of what you noticed with security and our staff last year. And we met at the museum a couple of days ago, and specifically heard from Heidi about those concerns, and we're able to have a kind of more filled out dialogue. And the city staff that Beth mentioned was there for that discussion too. And so that's helpful feedback for us. And I just wanted to say that we've spoken to Heidi and gotten more details about that. And hopefully, the only other thing I want to say is hopefully this can be a more continual dialogue as we operate. And the more feedback we can get, timely, recent feedback, if issues keep arising for you all, the better it is for us to be able to address that feedback. And then, if I may, Em, I think you're running this, but I saw Brad raise his hand for the next question. So I just wanted to address that from the feedback from the museum.
Yeah, thank you so much. Brad, go ahead.
Yeah, I can address Christine's inquiry because she kind of described what we do kind of perfectly, is when you're noticing behaviors that could be disruptive or unsettling that's in your neighborhood, especially in the area where you are. You can call us at Outreach Fort Collins. We're not affiliated with the mission at all, but we're partners. We all kind of work together with this kind of stuff. But you can call us. You described it really perfectly, Christine, when you're saying, they're not doing necessarily anything illegal, because that wouldn't be a police call. But you can call me and my team. We're open Monday through Saturdays. If you have anything that you want to talk about, if there's a episode that you're seeing that could be something related to mental health or substance abuse, give us a call, because we can intervene, de-escalate the situation, and hopefully connect that person to resources that he or she may need. And I can try to, Christine, I can try to get you my contact information if you don't have it.
Yeah, that'd be great. I don't know if you could put it in the chat, or if you feel comfortable doing that, or whatever, that'd be great.
I'll do it right now.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I do have a hand up from Abby. Abby, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question?
Hi there. I am just gonna let you know I am driving, so I might drop out here. I
Okay.
apologize in advance. I am the owner of the Edwards House at 402 West Mount Avenue, and I'm heavily involved in the Visit Fort Collins. My question for you is, why do we, Fort Collins, when we have out of towners come visit, we showcase Old Town Fort Collins. It's a destination. It's one of the biggest gems we have here in Fort Collins, including Mountain Avenue. So why is it necessary to put the homeless shelter in the middle of one of our greatest attributes we have?
I can jump in to try to answer that. Thank you, Abby, for that question. Quite frankly, we search everywhere. We, as our city staff, staff from Rescue Mission, I know Seth is involved. We've looked, and we haven't always had it there. The last year and this year, it's been right in the middle. The year before that, it was in the food bank warehouse during the height of the pandemic. Before that, it was Community of Christ over in the Library Park area. For the 5 years before that. And the good news is we're very much in the process, Rescue Mission is very much in the process of trying to get a larger, big enough shelter that would be good for year round on a property donated by Bohemian in the North College area, Mason and Hibden area. And they, I think, just started the development review process. So it's still 2 to 3 years out, most likely, but that's what kind of the future holds, that we would have a big enough facility so we would not have to search and try to find a place that's really not ideal for anyone, quite frankly, but just trying to get whatever we can so that people can get inside overnight. So I know it's not the best answer. It's what we have right now to work with.
Okay, I appreciate that. I will add, I live right downtown, Old Town, and the amount of kind of, I hate to judge, but men walking around in particular that are not people that we want around our kids, saying profanities to the air. It's just not a good feeling for Fort Collins. And I feel like we need to move the homeless shelter out of downtown Fort Collins. I think it's a good thing to have. Nobody should go without shelter, but just the fact that it's in our neighborhoods and now in our most prized part of town, it's really frustrating. So thank you for hearing me out. I appreciate
Thank you,
that.
Abby. All right. The person on 970-229-9540, go ahead and unmute yourself. That's *6 to unmute yourself and ask your question or make your comment.
Hi there, this is Heidi Cross. I'm with the museum also, and did appreciate we met with city folks and outreach folks and shelter folks the other day, and did appreciate that meeting. I thought it was constructive, but wanted to air my concerns here. I was frequently by the museum once or twice a night, probably close to 7 days a week, from 7 to 11, 7 to midnight-ish. So saw a lot of, the activity and behavior. The majority of people who were using the shelter seem to be, polite, say hi, no problems. And then there's other handfuls and problems. Some have already been addressed. Trash left around the front of the buildings, in the patio area. Several times watching people who were trying to find the shelter, not really knowing where it is or too drunk to remember, that were just randomly trying doors of other businesses up and down mountain. As the weather got warmer, they moved from inside the shelter and started setting up camps right outside the shelter, including in the bushes. And those were there for a week or two before those got removed by, or moved along by, I'm not sure if that was outreach or police. The porta potties, hopefully that's not an issue. We had first one and then 2 porta potties right on the exterior wall of the building, and those didn't always get used. So there was used toilet paper and urine and whatnot alongside the building. It seemed to be, from watching, more times than not, there'd be a group right outside the shelter all smoking. This included staff and security. Only once did I see security actually moving away from the very front of the building. The role of security seemed to be just hanging out, smoking with the clients there. We had been assured that they would be, checking the nearby buildings and taken care of. But it seemed that, I don't know what happened inside the shelter, but anything outside the immediate shelter door was then ignored. Again, the encampment that started, confused as to why that wasn't addressed by the shelter as soon as the problems occurred, why the overflowing trash was never addressed. These are people that are being served by the shelter. I would have expected the shelter employees, staff to address those problems, which would have helped with neighborhood relations, not just for us, but the others along the immediate area. I do think with the change of location, that's kind of a hidden entrance from anybody, and I would expect there to be more problems with security and other issues with the entrance on the west side of the building. No one driving by is going to be able to really see what's going on there. Staff's going to have a harder time looking out the door and seeing what's happening because it goes in more directions. There's a parking lot between our building and the city building where the shelter will be, that I can see being a problem too. So I think in any agreement between the shelter and the city, it needs to really lock down what the role of the hired security will be, expectations for policing the immediate outside. I know that doesn't need to extend to all of downtown, but at least the immediate control that the issues wouldn't be there if the shelter was there, I think needs to be addressed and worked out beforehand.
Thank you so much, Heidi. Bonnie, I saw that you had your hand raised and then you put it down. If you still have a question, you're welcome to go ahead.
Bonnie, you're still muted. You need to click on that bottom button and unmute yourself.
There, finally.
Gotcha, Bonnie.
I too am a member of the board at the Global Village Museum and was in on the meeting on Tuesday with the rescue mission and a number of people from various city offices and services. And I wanted to say that that meeting was a productive meeting, and everyone was willing to accept and respect the concerns that highly voiced for the museum at that meeting. And I do feel that exceptional communications have been opened between various offices and with the rescue mission and outreach and various other people who were there. So I do believe that this year will be a much better year than it was last year. And I thank everybody for that.
Thank you, Bonnie. We really appreciate your feedback, and I'm glad to hear that you were able to join that meeting and it was productive for you.
I'm gonna hop in and say that there have been other times that city staff have helped facilitate some kind of ongoing conversations as we've worked with shelters and surrounding partners, neighbors, businesses. And in this case, it sounds like maybe that is an option that we should look at, scheduling a follow-up meeting and having Fort Collins Rescue Mission city staff outreach Fort Collins and Global Village folks, and as well as if there are other neighbors who'd like to kind of chime in there or other businesses that want to chime in. That's been really successful in the past where we've had a scheduled time where we can, how'd it go this week? Okay, it looks like it's going pretty well. Then the meetings get bumped out a little bit further apart until things look like they're going really well. And we always make sure that folks have the contact information for Seth and Brad, that they know how to contact police services, both the 911 and the non-emergency. You see John Fayan on screen. He's our assistant police chief who manages all of the community service work, which this is a part of, and it is a part of our District 1 area. So as a follow-up, I'm going to commit on behalf of city staff that we'll do that. It likely will not be me at the meeting, but probably it will be Brittany Depew, who is the person who manages a lot of our work with people experiencing homelessness and has great partnerships with all of our vendors that are working in that area. She wasn't able to attend tonight, but she is another contact person.
Thanks, Mercy. I see the number. I see Heidi, you've got your hand back up. But do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself?
No, my hand wasn't back up. It evidently didn't log back up. So I will try it again. Thanks.
No worries, I can help that. Martha, I see your hand is back up.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, one of the questions I have is, given the problems we had with security last year and a couple of particular residents who were presumably mentally ill or otherwise impaired, creating a good deal of difficulty in breaking a window. We can't really afford to have that happen again, given the current circumstances. What kind of accountability is there going to be for this security company to assure that they are in fact doing the job that they've been hired to do? And I would also like to know what kind of accountability is expected of the residents. Is this something where they can just kind of come and go from the shelter at will because they say they want to go smoke and then they come outside to hang out? Or how exactly is that managed? I would appreciate some insight on that.
So Tracy, who is on the call, and our operations person. Do you want to address the first part of that question? And then I think either Seth, if you would address the second part of the question about people being able to come and go, and Tracy, you want to talk about the contract and how we manage the contract and the accountability?
Yeah, the rescue mission actually has a lease with the city of Fort Collins and is liable for all the damages within the premise of the lease. Unfortunately, things happen outside the premise of the lease, and it's really most of the time it's a Fort Collins PD issue. If there is damage outside of the lease premises, but I think that we're doing everything we can to put video around the building as much as possible that's reasonable, so that we can deter some of that, or at least follow up on some of that. So I feel bad about the window that broke last year, and I just don't know who is responsible for that. I mean, it could have been a person at the shelter. It could have been somebody leaving a bar. I don't know. So I don't know if that totally addressed your question, but the answer is we do have a lease for the premise, and the rescue mission is responsible for damages there.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in a little about holding the security company accountable. We'll have a contract with them that will outline our expectations of the work that they will need to do in order for us to pay them. So if they're not doing the work that they are contracted to do, then we would be, the city would then need to hold them accountable for that. So we'll be pretty clear on these things. These items have been brought up tonight, what our expectations are. Rescue mission, their staff is there overnight, so they can help us as far as what security is doing. And then we'd love to hear if you are seeing things such as things that you're mentioning. We'll make sure to address those with the security company. So we'd want to make sure you let us know if you're seeing things that appear to you that they're not upholding their end of the deal.
Is there going to be any additional lighting in the back part of the building, which is very dark? Are the gates going to be locked at night so people can't be hanging out between the two buildings? Because there are dumpsters and other things back there, plus doors into the building where no one would see them if trying to get in, and windows.
As far as the lighting goes, we have upgraded some of the lighting and fixed some of the lighting back in that area. I'm not opposed to putting additional lighting there. I want to make sure that we are responsible about the amount of light we're putting in there. There are some other park lights that actually spill over to that area. So I think the lighting isn't too bad back there, but again, I'm not opposed to putting some wall packs or some downlighting to make sure that we're not causing a lot of light pollution for the other neighbors, but still adequately lighting it for security. As far as the gate goes between the two buildings, that is still under discussion. Beth, I don't know if you had any discussions with our security team today. But that was one of the suggestions that was brought up the other day, that I think the team is still kicking around.
I've not heard an update on that from them yet. They were looking into that. We're concerned about other issues that could be created, so they were carefully looking at that.
Yeah, so we will get back to you definitely on the security of the gate between in the parking lot between the two buildings.
And as a female who in the back, sometimes when I'm doing work at the museum, I would just say I don't think that the lighting back there is very adequate. I know that I think twice sometimes when I'm on my own, walking around the building to get in. So just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Okay, so Martha, could I follow up on that just a little bit? Are you talking the lighting between the two buildings, or are you talking the lighting of Global Village on the west side of that?
I'm talking, well, we don't have well, we have a west side. The west side, there is no entree to the building. It's just a blank wall. I'm talking about the north side and the south side for us, are the two key areas of concern.
Okay.
And the north side is the one inside the area that could potentially be fenced. And it is not well lit.
Okay. Right. I have not looked at the south side of the building. In other words, the mountain entrance. I have not looked at that. And
Okay. That's not what I'm talking about, though. The street lighting there is reasonably okay.
Okay.
It's north side. Yeah.
Okay. And okay, I get you.
Kathleen, I see that you're trying to talk, but you are on mute if you want to add to this conversation. And then I would love to circle back around to Seth to answer the question about operations and whether or not people are allowed to come and go. But go ahead, Kathleen, what would you
Okay.
like to add to that?
I
about?
just wanted to add that our staff, that is their parking area in the back. And they leave at 5 o'clock when the museum is closing under most occasions. There are occasions when we have a program, which isn't very often, but by 5 o'clock this winter, it will be dark back there. So we've got to be sure we've got adequate lighting in that parking area for their safety.
Right. And I agree. So we'll definitely take a look at that.
Okay.
That actually, because that is your parking back there, as well as others, that's one of the concerns about if we do lock those gates, what time would we lock them? And we don't want to lock anybody in, obviously. So.
Okay, thank you.
Seth?
So I'll go ahead and answer that if that's okay. So what we've implemented in the last 6 months with all of our guests is everyone who comes into our shelter signs a kind of good community behavior expectations document. And so, and if they leave for a while and then they come back, they have to re-sign it again. So it's all fresh in their minds. And so we're really holding guests more accountable for being good community members. And, you know, now that I have heard, you know, the concerns about hanging out front, we can definitely think about ways of kind of limiting that to the best of our ability, or the times in which they might do that. Unfortunately, sometimes having a smoke break is one of the best ways of keeping behaviors calm as well, but I understand the concern, so we will definitely talk about ways to address those issues.
Did that answer your questions?
This is Martha. Hold on one moment. In part, yes, thank you. I'm still wondering though, what happens go out and then come back in and go out and come back in, because a lot of the bad behavior seems to happen kind of when they're on the street. And I recognize that some people who are unhoused do not feel comfortable going into shelters, but I also recognize that there probably needs to be some limits or some expectations on that kind of constant coming and going, because that, I think they're hanging out in our doorways and defecating and urinating on the sidewalk and in front of our doors, or in one case twice on our patio.
I hear you. For the most part, well, I can't say because I wasn't here for the whole winter last year, but with the guys who are going in and out, if they display a behavior that's not being a good community member, putting the other guests at risk, or just, they're not suited to be inside. We have asked guests to leave. One of the things that we can do better is to making sure that they leave the area with the help of police and security, as opposed to hanging outside and waiting for their friends to come out. So we can look at hours and attempt to put a cap on when they could go outside, and try to limit the in and out as best we can.
Yeah, and one thing I want to just say real quick, if I can, Beth, is one thing that we commit to doing is we commit to hear your concerns and try to address them as best we can. But I want to be real clear that we can't commit to things that we can't control. And people experiencing homelessness are adults, and we can't keep them inside. The most one of the tools that we can use is to say, you can't go outside again. If you go outside again, you won't be welcome back in. And that doesn't exactly solve your problem, Martha, that I hear you saying, which, is a legitimate issue. I'm not discounting it whatsoever. But I want to be clear about how we can operate to be a good neighbor and be frank about what we can't do, and just have that as an open conversation. I don't want to be making excuses, but I do want to be clear about the limits of the tools that we have to use. And frankly, John Fan and his District 1 police force are always ready to help us out when we need their services for a situation that might be a safety issue in the vicinity and for our guests. And so really the partnership is what we lean on, because if we have all of these hands helping with these issues, we can do the most good, even if we can't control every single situation or every single guest that we have in our shelter.
I just wanted to let everyone know too, one difference I think that will impact this particular concern is that the bathrooms last year at 212 were not adequate for what was needed. It was due to old bathrooms, old plumbing, and tree roots and whatever else, big issues. The 117 North Mason location has two ADA compliant restrooms that should be able to handle it. That's what we're hoping for, of course. Don't know of any root or piping issues. Tracy would be able to tell us if he had any clue of anything there. So the hope is that people aren't also having to go out to go to the bathroom. So that was happening last year. At least now they'll be able to use the restroom inside. They one less reason to have to go outside. And if there were issues with that restroom, because quite frankly, some of the issues around that you're saying, finding defecation or urination outside, they should have access to indoor restrooms that are quite nice. So hopefully they will choose those and not to go outside, especially since the other, we won't be having a porta potty we're not planning on that at all, unless some big emergency happens. There will not be porta potties out there this year.
If I could add on to that. So the other thing that we are doing, and I really haven't shared this yet, we think we have the ability to put hand dryers in the restrooms, eliminating paper towels in the restrooms, which caused us some issues last year. So we feel pretty strongly that it can happen and will happen.
My understanding is there was a question about the entrance, why in the west as opposed to the east or the east side, where there's the main entrance. Now, Tracy, if you want to talk about that, the choice about using the west entrance.
Yeah, so the west entrance not only is the actual space on the west side in the middle of the building, but the rest of the building actually will be occupied also. So there'll be programming going on in a conference room next to it. But this particular open area will be locked off to other places within the building, but you wouldn't be able to come in from the east side because there is staff, could very well be staff there. And you'd have to walk the building. I'd have to show you a drawing, but the building is really kind of a maze, and the most logical entrance is from the west for this purpose.
Right. I don't notice any other hands raised at the moment. Continue to feel free to put up your hands or put anything in the chat if you have any further questions. And if you're a member of staff or a member of somebody working on this project, feel free to jump in if you have anything else to add. If not, I will begin wrapping things up. And remember that I am always available and staff is always available to continue to field questions and comments as we continue on this project. And as we head towards that city council meeting. Yes.
This is Heidi. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Heidi. I wasn't sure if your hand was up again or still up.
It was again, but to address some of the lighting, the front of the museum building, the lights along the sidewalk, I'm looking at them now. One is semi-functional, one is barely flickering, and I think there's another one or two that are inoperative. So if those are replaced, that would probably take that. On the west side of the building, between the alley and the Laster's site, where the bushes are and where people were sleeping, hanging out, hiding, whatever, behind the bushes, there's no lighting along that wall at all. So that might help mitigate some of the problems moving out there. The other thing that I don't know if it's mentioned or not, that extra trash cans, both where the existing ones are along the sidewalk and probably a couple other sites closer to the entrance, would be helpful.
Thank you, Heidi. Tracy, I don't know if you have anything else you wanted to add or you wanted to just make sure that you got that. I am taking some notes for this meeting, so if you want to take a look at them, I can share them with you, and it's recorded as well.
Yeah, I'd like to take a look at them and see what we need to add and what we can add. And I know any of the lighting that is inoperable, we can get to work, but I think we can even upgrade that to make that even better these days with some LED downlighting.
Okay. Sounds good. Heidi, was that all of your questions?
Yeah, I think that'd work. Like I said, the ones on the building itself, they're almost prehistoric, so upgrades would probably help visibility.
Sounds good. We'll add that to our laundry list of lights. All right. So, you'll notice in the chat that I uploaded a document in there, and that contains all of the links that I promised to you all. Links to my contact information, links to make public comment for the council meeting. So everything that you need should be there, links to the recording for this video. So that's important for you to access. Go ahead and save that if you'd like it before the meeting ends. I will also put up a slide here with my contact information on it so that you have that available to you as we wrap up. And I will go ahead and close the meeting. Feel free to raise your hand and ask me any questions as people kind of filter out. I will stay on until everyone is gone.
Just want to say thank you to Seth, Paula, Brad, John, Tracy, who were there and able to help answer some questions. Thank you so much for being here. And to Marcy and Em for running the meeting. And
Thank you all.
Thank you for hosting.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, all.
Marcy is out of here.
well, I guess I'll log off too. Thank you so much.
Sounds great. You two have a pleasant evening.
Good night.